Welcome to our special show, NNIS Sports Freestyle. In this show, we try and dissect the important events of the week and try and go into what has happened, why it has happened, and those are not always easy questions to answer. So, keeping me company would be the head of sports initiative of emerging sports, Sandeep Mishra. Sandeep, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Okay, so let's begin with wrestling. We'll hit two topics on this show. One would be wrestling, and the other is doping. Both exciting topics, as you know. But to begin with, it is wrestling. And the most important part about wrestling is that it has ceased to be discussed in India as a sport. It is more about protesting wrestlers being dragged into buses, being arrested, then bailed out, and a lot of drama that has gone on for quite some time now. So, Sandeep, the first important point is that it needed the intervention of Home Minister Amit Shah. And after that, when he had the meeting with the protesting wrestlers at his residence, then the wheels started moving. Anurag Thakur met them, obviously on a queue. And now there is again further controversy whether Sangeeta Phogat was taken to Brij Bhushan's house or not. The information that we have is that she was taken to his Delhi residence, but as part of an investigation. When you look uh, at the condition of the wrestlers and the sport of wrestling, what are your initial reactions?
I think the moment you look at the last 15 days, 30 days, and even before that, I mean, the way it developed over the years, because the talk has always been around that there's something wrong happening in the federation, that there's something wrong happening to women wrestlers. But nobody actually came forward to even say anything. And the moment they came forward, I think the government stepped in a way that they didn't want this to kind of blow over too much. They wanted to protect the WFI president, which of course, every government would want to do. But sometimes you do cross a line. You do cross a line and say that, at the end of the day, what is important? The important part is the wrestlers. The important part of the women wrestlers, they are the ones who are bringing you the medals, which is probably a very simplistic way of looking at it, that you bring a medal, so you need to be protected. No, you're a woman. A government's job is to step in and ensure and see that none of these things ever happen in a domain called sport. And I think that is what has come back to all of us, that is wrestling. And I'm saying this very, very honestly and probably frankly, that is wrestling the only federation over which we have a doubt. I think what will happen later on, and probably I think that's where we need to thank the wrestlers, is that over the years, probably a year or two, or maybe even sooner, and I do think and I do believe that it might be even sooner, that you will probably see a few more voices coming up and saying that what these wrestlers have gone through, we are also going through. I think that should be what needs to be taken forward, that you're not just putting a question mark on one house, but an entire IOA out there that needs to go and start cleaning up places so that these things are not repeated again.
I have a couple of problems with the way this entire protest was handled by the government, and I'll place those cards on the table. One, I felt they took too long to basically respond. They allowed the situation to deteriorate to such an extent that it became a tamasha. Then, third is that the wrestlers obviously took advantage of the situation, and I have no hesitation in saying that when the new Parliament House was inaugurated, they wanted to march there. They knew that they would be arrested and then later bailed. But the way the female wrestlers were dragged off the streets. I mean, that was shameful. It caught the international eye, and while one has been watching some international channels very assiduously, this was highlighted very, very prominently. And the major question was: is this how you deal with with wrestlers, or like you're saying, with sports stars? And they are some of our superstars. So, did it have to deteriorate to such an extent? Why wait for so long?
I think Anurag could have easily stepped in much earlier. He could have just got these guys into a room and just said that, okay, fine, I'm listening to you. Give me some time, but let's stop these protests. I'm not saying that, put a lid over the entire issue. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is that don't let it get into the media. Don't let it become a tamasha. And, you pointed out that they chose a day on the day the new parliament was being inaugurated. You also tell me, I mean, like, what does a wrestler do? He is going to choose a day when the maximum publicity can be given or taken by his fraternity. What if they had gone off to the border near Sonipat and protested? Do you think any of the media houses would have gone there? We exactly know what the media was doing. We exactly know what's happening in the media houses. Everybody was just clamping down. I know editors who have said, don't put out this news. I mean, what do you do when editor-in-chiefs are sending these signals down to the desks and saying that don't put this news out? So you have wrestlers stranded completely, the media not with them at all after a point, and then you have the government who's just silent out there waiting. And I honestly don't know what were they waiting for. At the end of the day, the home minister or whoever has called them and spoken to them, the sports minister has called and spoken to them. As you say, this could have easily been done 15, 20, 25 days earlier, and none of this would have happened. The biggest disruption, after a point, every protest becomes like a tamasha. Every protest has a particular span, 7 days, 10 days, 12 days. I think the government is smart enough to understand that once it goes beyond 15, 20 days, there is something called fatigue that steps in. Now, fatigue could be wrestlers, the fatigue could be people who are standing there, the fatigue could be the media, because something or the other constantly keeps happening. And wrestlers cannot be in the spotlight constantly. The disruption that I feel now is very simple, is that Asian Games are coming up. It's a very, very important year. All of this is leading to the 2024 Paris Olympics. Where are these wrestlers then? How do you get them back into the training? How do you then get them back into that module from where a wrestler or a sports person feels that, okay, this is the medal I'm going for? I think
Sandeep,
all of that.
let me stop you, and I want to develop a point further, which is that when this wrestling protest started, and our team NNIS was present every day, morning till evening, and reporting from their live. So we were given a particular feedback from, and I don't want to name, but obviously there was a handful of people who were on the dais who said that we do not want the younger wrestlers to also sit in with us, because हम उनका करियर बर्बाद नहीं होने देना चाहते. हम नहीं चाहते कि उनका हाल हमारी तरह हो. Or the most important point was that if you take Bajrangpunia, you take Vinesh Phogat, Sakshimalik, their careers are almost getting over. Sakshi is seemingly over, and when it comes to Vinesh and Bajrangpunia, it all depends that will they be able to even qualify internally for the Paris Olympics. So was this a stand taken by the senior wrestlers that, okay, we are almost over the hump now, and so let's take this agitation forward and give a break to the youngsters?
But honestly, don't you feel that it affects the younger wrestlers? You have seniors, you have Olympic medalists, you have Asian medalists, you have world champion medalists, all sitting and protesting on a daily basis. All of these young wrestlers, apart from the training that they're doing, psychologically it affects them. Sports persons are probably being affected the most, because for them, unlike the media and unlike the others, they don't have to take sides. Okay, I'm going to take a side, okay, because this is pro-government or anti-government, so this is the way I need to write as a journalist. The people out there, the bystanders, are enjoying a tamasha that has gone on beyond that date that it should have. Now, for the younger wrestlers, they look up to Bajrang, they look up to Vinesh, they look up to Sakshi, they look up to so many. It affects them mentally, it affects them psychologically, that, am I doing the right sport or not? Is this the sport for me? Is this what is happening to them? So where am I then? I'm not even a medalist right now. I'm just probably a national champion. I still have to qualify, still go to the Asian Championships, still go to Asian Games. So where am I in that ladder of hierarchy that wrestling has? It does affect them. I mean, and I think all of this you will see in the next 6 to 8 months, where the younger wrestlers will be suffering as to how do we deal with this federation? Do I go and kind of cozy up? Or should I? Shouldn't I? Or do I go up to Bajrang and ask him कि मुझे क्या करना चाहिए? These are the questions that will come to a lot of younger wrestlers, whether they are male or whether they are female.
Okay, coming specifically, we must share with the viewers that the assurance that Anurag Thakur gave the wrestlers, their delegation at his residence after a pretty long chat and this was one of their primary concerns, that what will happen in the next election, because till now it was being seen that Brij Bhushan will also handle who gets elected next, and one of the top names was his son. But now the government has also promised to hold elections to the executive committee of the WFI by 30th June, and said that neither Brij Bhushan nor any of his close associates would have a role in the new panel. Now, when you see such an assurance, Sandeep, can you take it at face value?
Well, you have to take it at face value unless they kind of go back on them. Over the years, whatever we have taken at face value, when I say we, I mean our profession, the media, 60 to 70% of it has never really happened. And I'm not talking of just this, I'm also bringing in infrastructure, I'm bringing in coaching stuff and all of that. None of that has really appeared, or they, whatever they have promised has come true. But at this moment, looking at whatever championships are coming up, especially the Asian Games around the corner, I just wish the Federation can, and Anurag, Sports Ministry, and everybody, whoever can come in and solve this. I think the faster it is done, the better it is for sport, the better it is for those younger wrestlers. I think we've run a story, or we're just about to run a story about this Akhada where the coach is saying that younger wrestlers are not coming in because, as we said, as we spoke, that it's affecting them, and a lot of parents would also probably have question marks: should I send my child into wrestling or not? Is this really happening? And I'm talking from the sexual harassment point of view. Every parent is going to be scared. Is the government going to address that? Is my primary this thing. I really don't care about right now about how much of training is going to go in. Is Anurag going to stand up and say that, after today, we will never, ever hear anything which is sexual harassment or anything of that happening to any wrestler or any sports person in this country? Are they willing to put up their hand and say, this is our promise? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to deal or what they're going to even do with Brij Bhushan. I'm neither of us or anybody from the fraternities out that Brij needs to go to jail or anything. All of that the law needs to do. But at the end of the day, it's that 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 15-year-old young women wrestler, the males even, all of them, are they safe? That is the first thing I think that the sports ministry needs to stand up and say that this sport is safe. I think that's the priority.
So, are they safe or not is a heavy question, which will be addressed in time. I want to quickly go back, because of time constraints, also to the moment where the wrestlers reached Haridwar and wanted to throw their medals into the Ganga River. It reminded us of the point in time when a man called Cassius Clay, who later became Muhammad Ali, did the same after suffering brutal racism, threw his medal into a river. Now, post that, the way this whole agitation has been handled, they are saying increasingly, and I use the word they, in the sense that it has been politicized. But in India, anything that reaches up to this level has to be politicized. We both know that, and there's no point ducking. So Naresh Tikait of the Bharatiya Kisan Union steps in. The Khap Panchayats were already there in the picture from Haryana. So again, a quick word on the politics of sport.
I mean, do we really believe that it won't be politicized? I mean, are we that naive that political parties are not going to be walking in? Are we that naive that politicians don't rule over sport? I mean, it's been happening since independence. I mean, give me one instance where we had someone who was not a political animal but was interested and not interested in sport. I think it has to happen. It is bound to happen, and it is required also. At the end of the day, if nobody is going to listen to me, and if there are 3-4 political parties or some heavyweights who stand with me, and that's the reason why the media wants to write, I'm willing, because nobody from the government, which is supposed to be doing that job, is willing to listen to me. So if somebody stands there, I'll put a hand around him and say, okay, fine, thank you for standing by, because the people who are supposed to stand by me are not there at all. So I don't buy this politicization. It's convenient to say that. It's very convenient to say that, but it is inconvenient not to look at what the matter is. And the matter is simply sexual harassment. Please, for heaven's sake, give some respect to these wrestlers, to these sports persons, because that's what they deserve. Nobody wants to sit on the street. Are we kind of, telling ourselves that they did this for fun, or this was just dramatics? No, it's not. At the end of the day, there's something happening there. There is a lot of hurt. please go and understand that. And this is only for the government, that to understand what the women wrestlers are going through. Even if
Let's
even if I
let's
kind of
sorry, let's wind this session up because of time constraints by referring quickly to Brij Bhushan, the strongman from Gonda. I'm from Lucknow and I know the Lucknow Gonda region extremely well. तो ये हिंदी फिल्मों में ही होता है कि वहाँ बाहुबली गिरता है. लाइफ में बहुत ही कम ऐसा देखा गया है कि बाहुबली of the magnitude of Brij Bhushan falls. He controls 5 assembly constituencies. There are elections coming up 2024. There is Yogi Adityanath who has backed him up to a point. Also remember that Brij Bhushan has deep connects with Ayodhya. Now let's put that aside. I just want to ask you one thing, that it has happened repeatedly that these academies and these federations rather have been headed by politicians, and it looks like that nothing will change.
No, the political part of it is not going to change. I think that's part of a culture. That's the way we are. And, at the end of the day, when we have these arguments or, conversations, whether a politician should head a sports body or not, I'm definitely of the opinion that at least some of the bodies should be headed by political people, because at the end of the day, you still need money in the federation. But that doesn't mean that you step over the line. That is my only thing. Politicians are always there, will always be there, but let's not step over the line. Let's do our job and go home. And that's what a federation president should be doing.
So that Lakshman Rekha has to be there. Standard operating procedures need to be better, and the government, whoever it is, whether it is the BJP or anyone else, they need to react much quickly, and much faster. So let's end this chat on that note, and let's now switch to another very interesting topic called doping. Now here we have two interesting people who spoke to the NNIS Sports. One is, of course, the celebrated Anju Bobby George, who made history when she won the bronze medal in the long jump at the 2003 World Athletics Championship in Paris. And she's also the current vice president of the Athletics Federation of India. The second gentleman in the picture is, again, a celebrated sports medicine expert, Dr. P.S.M. Chandran, who has been a consultant with the Sports Authority of India and is also a member of the disciplinary panel of the National Anti-Doping Agency. Before we go further, our team from NNIS Sports spoke to both of them on the contentious issue of doping. And surprisingly, you will find, and we'll play these sound bites for you, you will find that there is, I won't use the word discord, but there is certainly a difference of opinion between what they are saying. So let's listen to them.
That is the news that we have been hearing for a long time, either first, second, or third. It doesn't excite me. The reason being that the percentage of sample tested positive, it is to about 3 to 4%. That's the statistic what it says. Well, you see the other side. How many are now clean athletes? About 97% are clean athletes. So why don't you take that into account? If out of 100, if 97 are clean, that's a quite encouraging figure, I must say. Rather than going into the negative side, to concentrate on the positive side, especially when the drug abuse is rampant in the society now, where more and more cases surface in coming to doping in sports, the percentage still remains very low compared to the statistics with the civil population who is addicted to drugs. So my point is that we have to see the positive side of the statistics, and number two, it doesn't excite me. Nothing serious about it. I don't feel so. That's my personal opinion. And it can change to number three or change to number one, because it doesn't mean that all the countries are doing honest testing. You may find countries which has got better performance in sports, having more number of positive cases. For example, Russia, for that matter, they have got more cases compared to India. And the cases are happening not because they are doing more and more doping, because testing more and more samples will reveal more and more cases positive. So I think I take it from that side. So India being number two, it is nothing to be unduly concerned about. That's my opinion.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. They're also actually all the department competition. We should have NADA screening, and even the district championships also. So even in junior level, in the district championships, I have heard many are doing this. And see, at very young age, we are actually killing the athletes, their talents. So there should like NADA's screening should be there.
My last question, ma'am.
It is very easy to say that you go and test state meets and district meets and all, but how many people know that what the cost of one test? One test, just a single test will ultimately cost about 20,000 rupees for one test. And if you go on testing at the lower level, district level, and where the money will come from? Will the government give that much money? Will the public contribute that much to NADA? So within the limitation on financial constraint, they have to do some testing, and they are doing a good job on that. With the limitation, they are doing maximum testing. And it is not it is not advisable to argue on that point that they should go down everywhere and go on testing. It is not testing for malaria or COVID. It is a very expensive test.
See, we are giving education from the very young age. Even the coaches, almost every month, Sai is calling athletes for these education programs through Zoom. And NADA is also. See, I am also part of NADA's these programs. I am also giving advice to the kids. So see, almost every week they are going for testing, and everywhere they are reaching. So more than that, I don't think we can do anything.
You can take it from me that doping will continue as long as sports continues. As long as sports is there, doping will be there. Only thing what we can do is that we can minimize the cases and make the athletes aware of the health hazards of doping. What doping does harm to the body. That is not, nobody's talking much about that. They are thinking about catching the athletes and then giving sanctions to them for punishing them. But educating them on the wrong thing they are doing is one thing good. Number two, they should be told about side effects, which sometimes very serious side effects happen to the body. The whole body can be damaged. Your liver can be damaged. Your heart can be damaged. Your joints can be damaged. And you can be a cripple if you're taking overdose of medications, the doping substances. But that knowledge is hardly given to the athletes. And they are scared that if you take this drug, opposite drug, you'll be caught, you'll be punished. So that is a negative way of educating the children, youngsters especially. And they are young people, and if you tell them not to do something, they will definitely do it. So you should be very methodical in dealing with them. And teach them this. Also, you have to teach them that drugs does not produce world champions. And there is no conclusive proof to say that if you take massive dose of doping substances, you will produce world records. That's a wrong notion. You have to have your backup scientists. As your fitness is concerned, your health is concerned. You're then monitoring your scientific tests to be done to improve your physiology, psychology. All these things have to be done scientifically. Then you produce a champion. Just by eating some tablets or getting an injection, you don't become a world champion. This should be instilled in the athletes at a very young age. They are going in the wrong side by thinking that doping can enhance performance. Maybe to some drugs, to some extent, to a minimum extent, can enhance performance. But if you see the records of the athletes who are winning the Olympics and World Championship, 97% of the athletes are clean. They're tested and they're found to be clean. That means without drugs, you can be world champion. That knowledge you should give to the children. Don't scare them that if you take the doping substances, you will be caught and you will be punished. That's the wrong message you are giving to the young population.
Well, those are very interesting sound bites, and it is very, very clear listening to both. Of course, Anju Bhavi George herself being a legendary athlete, so she is of the point of view that it needs to be stopped. But Dr. Chandran is far, far more practical, and he's saying a single test costs around $22,000. Who's going to pay for it repeatedly? And second, of course, his entreaty to all young athletes that don't do this, it will ultimately damage you. No one becomes a champion by doping. But Sandeep, I know that some of my best conversations with you have been on doping, and you have read reams and reams of articles and pieces and done a lot of research. You are also, I would say, some kind of authority on how masking is done. So anyway, let's get to the point. What are your initial thoughts about what Dr. Chandran and Anju Bobby George are trying to convey?
Well, Dr. Chandran has always been to the point. He's an emotional man. He would say that doping doesn't lead to becoming a world champion. I think history suggests otherwise. But there are 2 3 points. The best point that he made was that it's 20,000 rupees per test. And how do you want to do it at state level or the university level where the younger kids are actually taking it? Let's take it to a slightly larger point. Is that the 2021 or 2022 WADA's budget was 40 million. Now, 40 million is probably earned by many athletes who are in the top 3 bracket of their various events. So for them, the point I'm trying to make is that for them to try and do doping and then clean themselves up, they have the cash to do it, they have the sponsors to do it, and they have the will or the initiative there to put it in that sense. The budgets are not matching the testing, and it can never match unless countries and there's one more point to entire argument is who funds WADA. WADA is funded by the governments. Various governments fund WADA because they give them money, and also private organizations. So there is always a conflict of interest. So imagine if America or some other country is going to fund them to the tune of, let's say, $25 million. WADA, I'm not saying that WADA is going to say that, okay, I'm not going to be, testing American athletes, or if I find somebody, I'm not going to put a question mark on it. But sometimes in people's mind, if you are funded by an X organization or an X state, you sometimes kind of take a step back and you say, okay, fine. I mean, at least don't stop the funding. I think all of this needs to be cleaned up before we actually sit down and think about how to stop doping. Doping, as Dr. Chandran very rightfully says, doping is not going to stop. I mean, is corruption going to stop in this world? No. Similarly, doping is not going to stop. But your education processes in doping in schools, and I'm not even saying go to schools, because every school is not a track. Nobody's going to come out from a, I'm not again not trying to put a question mark on names, but most public schools are not going to give you your next track champion. He's also always going to come from the hinterland, from the rural area somewhere. So all these kids who come into the academies, they need to be shown photographs of people who've been caught and said, this is what happens. And this is why you should not be doping. The heroic stage of doping was 70s to 2000s. That's the time when maximum were caught, because testing was not there really. Now testing is there. They are really catching people. They are trying to understand. But at the end of the day, the athletes are 2 steps ahead. And it will always be like that, because so much money an athlete or other organizations can spend that IOC cannot really catch up all the time.
There is an interesting stat that I have, which says that in the year 2022, 62 Indian athletes were caught doping or in possession of the banned substances, as per the Athletics Integrity Unit. Then ahead of the 2022 Commonwealth Games, 5 members of the Indian athletic contingent had failed their dope test. Only Russia has recorded more doping violations than India, with 87 athletes receiving punishment. So we all know how Russia fares in the Olympics, and how some of their athletes were stopped from taking part. Let's not get into that. But again, coming back to the main issue where India is concerned, a couple of local events were held, national level trials were held, and it was shown in the media that the bathrooms were littered with syringes. I mean, what is going on? What kind of, the point that you were saying, what kind of coaching is being given to these athletes also? And when I say coaching, it's not about sport, it's about the ramifications of taking banned substances.
I think one really needs to accept the fact that apart from what happens at the junior stages, where a few athletes or probably a group of athletes may act on their own, and I'm taking it up to the senior level. I mean, if a senior athlete who's a national champion, who's gone to the Olympic Games, to the Asian Games, and the other championships which are continental and otherwise, if they are caught, I think somewhere along the line, the AFI and the Sports Ministry, along with the Sports Authority of India, should not only ban them, because that is what happens when you have a sample, and then if you want a B sample to be tested, which also becomes positive. I think the coach needs to be banned, because I refuse to buy this argument completely that a coach doesn't know that the athlete is taking something. This is humbug, and this is a load of bullshit that happens across track and field, where a coach has not done anything, and and this particular act, I think the US association is probably looking into. I think they've already put this in, if I'm correct, that the athlete, don't blame the athlete or don't ban the athlete maybe, but blame from where the source has come. Put them under the caution, or put a ban on them. I think unless that particular line is not crossed, or those lines are not joined together, it's not going to happen. I mean, you remember Flores Griffith Joyner, 10.49, Seoul Olympics, 100 meters. The record still stands. It's 10.63 is what is being run now. So, I mean, as I said, the best part was then, but if we say that Olympics or anything is going to be eradicated of doping, I mean, okay, fantasy, we're living in a Mickey Mouse world completely. I mean, that's what the old...
We will leave it at that. And basically, the young athletes, like you were saying, and Dr. Chandran also suggested, who are coming out, who have these hopes and visions of making a massive name for themselves, earning money, and why not? But doping and taking banned substances is not the way out. And like they used to say earlier, whatever you do, don't get caught. In a cynical way, maybe that's true, but many do get caught. So think about your future. Thanks, Sandeep, and we'll be back with much more on this show next weekend. Thanks for watching.